Hey, you're listening to Abyss Gazing, a horror podcast where we celebrate all things spooky and mental health.
And as usual, I'm just hanging out for the ride with Josh and Billy, and my name's Mark.
My name
Oh,
is Josh. I don't know if I am in this dimension or another. We are joined by Billy, or maybe a clone, or if you're a Marvel guy, variant of Billy. How are you doing tonight, Billy?
Doing pretty good. Not sure which timeline I'm on right now, but I'm here.
I have that same question, like coming out of this movie. All roads have led to this. We are talking about Phantasm, Ravager that Mark teased about last week that uh Avishay also teased about. All right. So Billy's the champ of this series because he had never seen a single Phantasm movie, binge watched them all just to talk about this one.
yeah.
So Billy, what'd you think of the series?
The series, I mean, yeah, it was pretty good. It just got, you know, if it got confusing, honestly. Not in a bad way, just it jumped around. Sometimes you didn't know which way was up. And but I actually liked it. I realized I'd actually watched the first one before when I was younger. Um, Kind of like on USA Up All Night, if you remember that. They actually played the movie
Oh
late at
yeah.
night. So I had seen that one. Once I started watching it, it came back to me that I had seen that one. But I actually enjoyed it for what it is. An older, to me, it was still kind of one of those campy, and you got to enjoy it for what it is and not expect a lot out of it.
Oh, it's definitely campy.
Yeah, I I think I came out of this because I was also relatively new, and I think Mark had seen some of the sequels, but not all of them. And I really
I
liked,
think I had seen just like number three or something like that.
I
I'd
really
seen
like,
one and three.
yeah, like as a retrospective, real quick, I really liked the series overall, and Oblivion was such a high point in the series, and then we are jumping into the long awaited, like this took freaking so long, so many years. Like there's 20 over 20 years. No, 18 years
Between
between.
Oblivion and Ravager.
Yeah, there's 18 years between, and my God,
It's also, I think, the shortest of the bunch.
it is. So
Like
here
it ends and you're like, wait, are they what? Are they done?
You did
here's
watch
what
the scene after the credits, right? There was another
Yeah.
scene after the first set of credits. Okay.
Yeah.
yeah. There's so Bloody Disgusting originally about 10 years ago did a story on this a few years before this actually came out, and like this had long been like Phantasm V had long been kind of like a rumored kind of thing that was coming. However, at one point, New Line, we actually brought this up last week. New Line was actually at one time maturely announced that they had acquired the remake rights to a brand new trilogy, but it never came to fruition. So, Mark, the remake discussion we had last week almost happened,
Ah.
but instead we got this.
I still think this could benefit from a remake if done correctly. Not all
One,
movies I will say that about. Like,
one,
fuck those guys who are doing that with The Crow right now. Those are assholes.
We were talking about that earlier. I don't know if anybody could do justice to The Crow doing a remake.
so
It's just
yeah,
like, yeah, no.
what how did you guys feel about this finale, like quote unquote finale for uh Ravager? Because at this point, the way this one ends, there's literally like don't know how you make a sequel to it. I really hope that they don't. Angus Scrimm's no longer with us, but how did you guys feel about this movie?
At
I mean,
first, it felt like they were going to pull the it's all in his head thing,
mhm.
which would have been annoying as hell. So there was that. wasn't too fond that they even played into that for a lot of the first movie or a lot of the fifth movie. Is Reggie just really have dementia? But
Yeah.
then it seems like Mikey shows up and anything around him, he's able to kind of interrupt the illusions and stuff. Or at least that's the way I was seeing it. So yeah, it was a little confusing. Just a little bit. Tidbit.
And it was giving me like a Red Planet vibe, like they were going off to the Red Planet with the big spheres and everything else was part of the ending. But yeah, the dementia thing, I just thought of Mark, man. I figured it was like Mark in his head.
Some
So
days.
mean. Some days.
Someday.
Uh, Man, I texted Mark. I sat down to watch this last night with my wife, and I sat down within the first 2 minutes of this movie. I knew I was going to hate it.
You're like, I hate this.
And the reason that I think I hate it is somewhat because of A, this is one of the last movies that Angus Scrimm ever made, and it's a terrible thing to end on a crappy legacy like Ravager.
Mhm.
Uh, Two, this movie looked like half of it, you could tell that there was definitely budget restraints. They were really creative with budget restraints on like, truly independent ones like one and, four. But dude, like half this movie is like digital. And that really bothered me. Like, I'm all for supporting independent cinema, and I can overlook like really bad CGI if it's like either on purpose, like Lamageddon was, or Velocipaster, like we talked about earlier this year. But man, like there are some parts of this movie that as a viewer were really hard to support and really hard to get behind because they looked so noticeably fake.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, definitely. Yeah. Having a Rain Man moment. Sorry.
Well, that's kind of how this movie felt. It was like all over the place to me. I mean, within the first, what, 10, 15 minutes, I texted Mark WTF.
It
Seriously, I was like, what in the world, man?
so it almost seemed like they were trying to mislead you for a portion of it. Reggie's just got dementia or something. Then it was like, no, no, he doesn't. Then they start playing out one of the original stories, or the actual way the story goes, where Reggie ends up picking up some random chick and trying to bang her somewhere along the way.
Oh,
Yeah,
Dawn.
it's all over the place. The movie was probably the most confusing of the bunch, and it's where it brings out that the tall man is almost godlike, so you learn a lot more about him. But at the same time, they still don't really bring closure to a lot of the other things, like what is this red dimension or red world? What are all these other creatures he brings about? How did the Sentinels turn into like fucking blimps? And
And where did these other casts and people come from, like Chunk or that random
Chuck.
people? Huh?
Chuck.
It Chunk. I
Chuck,
looked it up.
Oh, is it
No,
Chunk?
I'm looking on
Oh, it is
IMDb.
Chunk.
It
which
is
one was
Chunk.
Chunk?
The
Chunk,
short
Jane.
Chunk was
Yeah.
the
The
little
dwarf.
guy. Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay. And then Rocky makes an appearance, or whatever her name was, at the very end.
right.
She should have been in the
Yeah.
whole movie too. They should have just gone ahead and said, fuck it. Had her in the
Like
whole movie.
And then the
I
short guys, the ones that are on the bad side, the short guys, did
the
they remind
dwarfs.
you, the dwarfs? Did they remind you of the Schwartz? Because they did to me when I was
The
watching it. I thought of Field of Schwartz.
I I like the Spaceballs reference a lot better to the evil Jawas that Mark has been calling him this entire
They
podcast
look like
series.
Jawas.
No, man,
No,
they're
Schwartz.
Spaceballs Schwartz all the
They were
way.
Schwartz all the way, man. I saw that and I couldn't stop thinking about it. I started laughing.
Oh God. Oh God.
Like
I've been working all day. Sorry.
I really enjoy the I really enjoy like the callbacks that this film does. Like, this is the first time that we see like the lady in lavender who is like the shapeshifter that the call man would
Mhm.
uh change into to seduce guys from the first film. And like you said, like we also got Rocky from the third film. And like they're two callbacks. They're really well done. But like overall, like this movie just like Billy was saying, this movie just feels all over the place. And I think what makes this film even worse is that they had literally, so this came out in 2016. They had been working on this film for actively 12 years
Do
to
we know
try and complete it.
do we know how much the studio got involved to tell them what they could and couldn't do and how to change things?
I don't even
Because
think this is a studio thing anymore. Because like we established last time, like this movie is written and so this movie is co-written by Don Casarelli, but this is the first film that he has not directed. So this is also written and directed by David Hartman, as Avishai had shared last week. He was like attached to like other productions that Casarelli had done with John Dies at the End, as well as Bubba Hotep. But like, I don't think this was a studio. I think what happened was this movie was financed independently and then bought by a studio.
usually when you get a film this all over the place or having this many issues with the story like this does, the studio's gotten involved somehow and told them to make changes that aren't needed.
And I agree with that normally, but like here, I think the thing that really like gets me is that this is a movie that like honestly didn't need to be made because the fourth film had such that it not only went back to the roots, but it like had the perfect send off. And this one almost makes this movie like feel like it doesn't have purpose. And I don't know, like how did you guys feel about like the space time and like going in between timelines to kind of like illustrate that like Reggie didn't actually have dementia, but he was like in between like uh dimensions essentially.
I mean, I thought it was crazy, and then it seemed like they went into the white room. I don't even know what that room was called, but and it seemed like everything settled down. It was one Reggie at that point, but everything out of that was like three or four different versions of him. It just, like I said earlier, it just
And it's like I thought it was cool. Like this movie definitely has cool moments. Like one of my favorite moments is like as they're like exploring about like how to stop the tall man, like you see like that white room that is just like an infinite copy of like tall men. I thought that was a fascinating like spin on the mythology. I really thought that was cool. And I liked how the climax of this movie, for as terrible as it looked, actually showed us a world where the tall man wins and what that looks like. I thought that was really cool. It looked terrible.
I mean, the room full of tall men also played into the fact you find out in two that he's really one of the sentinels in a body. So if the body gets damaged, he's got backups. He's like friggin' Pinky in the brain.
I don't even like this movie's like such a mess that like this is the first time that I'm coming into podcast about one of these movies that I'm just like I literally have no point of where to start. I cannot articulate how much I hated this movie. Let that be said on the
the
record. This is one of the worst movies. And I will also say this that Bloody Disgusting in 2016 listed this as one of their top five worst horror movies of the year.
Sweet.
yeah, it felt like a throwaway to me, to where it's a movie that, like you said earlier, it didn't have to be there.
Unless it was a case of, oh, crap. Sorry.
We're keeping Mark awake.
Unless it was a case of needing to keep the IP like Fox was doing with X-Men and they progressively got worse. They were
In,
just
ca-
throwing out X-Men movies to keep the rights.
in case anyone is wondering, this was listed number three on that list. But Mark, to your point, again, I come back to this. I'm pretty sure that Phantasm is a creator-owned property. I think Don Coscarelli is to the world of uh Phantasm the way that Don Mancini is to Chucky, or the way that Clive Barker now is to Pinkett. Like there are, there are certain things that you don't want to see happen. And I think that's the reason why, there was a rumored trilogy that almost happened, remake wise, over at New Line. That never fell through. In the 12 years that they got announced this, there was also whispers of there another kind of sequel to Oblivion that would have been 3D and would have been released by Anchor Bay. So this isn't necessarily a studio decision or studio involvement. This is Passarelli essentially trusting his IP to somebody else,
So are you
unfortunately.
indicating that he made a bad choice?
Uh,
Because at
I will
any
go on
time, as a
I will go on the record
producer,
and say that yes, he made a bad choice.
I feel like he would have had the ability to step in at any time and be like, dude, you're fucking this up.
Keep in mind that he's also a co-writer on this movie as well. Not just a producer, but also a co-writer on this movie.
I'm trying to be nice.
So David Hartman is let me see. Apparently this is a pretty common name.
I'm trying to be nice, and you're like, no, screw those guys. This movie sucked.
Right. I'm gonna share my screen real quick. I just need you guys to see this real quick.
Okay.
Hold on.
Do you not know how to say it?
This is David Hartman, the director's IMDb page. Mostly just wanted to show you this for his profile picture. I thought this was just freaking hilarious.
Yeah, that is fantastic.
I will post this onto the Instagram for Victims and Villains so that you guys can also see it. But I mean, he's mostly done like um at this point, like I don't know if this was not his first film that he had done. He had done majority of like direct to video stuff. Honestly, weirdly enough, like he's done a lot of like Transformers and like Pooh Bear stuff. Um, that's just very, very random to me. But this isn't like it's not his first time directing, and like you guys feel that like if for the first time that the series has a different director, that we are seeing the is that part of the reason that you guys feel this movie just kind of like doesn't match the quality of some of the other sequels?
Yeah, it didn't feel it didn't feel the same at all. It just because everything was essentially for the most part traditional effects and everything in the originals. And then this one took the George Lucas approach with everything digital except for a couple people and a couple props on set. It makes it feel a whole lot different.
And this one, like I said, it just felt thrown together more than the other ones did with the storyline and everything else.
Which again, I come back to like the development of this. Like this is like baffling. Like they started conversations about this and started teasing this like back in 2004, 6 years after the like the last one Oblivion had done. And I will say this. I really do feel like the ending of this movie, kind of like the sentimentalness of this movie, like does tie all three arcs of Mike, Reggie, and Jody together really well, kind of connecting and feels like a callback to the original one. But I'm like genuinely curious how you guys felt about like how this movie end it in terms of like not just as a film, but also as kind of like potential finale for the series.
I think it was interesting that they excuse me, essentially let the tall man win in the finale. And I feel like it may have been almost like a nod to Angus dying, allowing him to go out on top.
Possibly. So this movie was completed in October 2015. In 2014, they had basically sent out the first trailer for the film. 2015, they were completed, awaiting distribution, and then in January 2016, on the 9th, Angus Scrimm, who played the tall man, he died at the age of 89. So it, it quite possibly is. Um, I don't know. Maybe there's like an alternative like cut out there where like Reggie wins, but yeah.
Because realistically, there's no way the like 5 or 6 of them or whatever are going to beat all that.
Yeah, that's true.
They're not going to win that, period. No matter
Yeah,
how good they are, they're not going to win that. It's that all verse one kind of thing. Like, how many times did you die playing Metal Gear Solid as a kid? You can't do it. It's not possible. So they set the story up for that one to essentially have him winning and go out as the winner of that entire battle of movies.
yeah. I don't know. How did you guys feel about like it's really hard to like dig into this movie because it's like Billy said, like it's just kind of all over the place. Like it seems to just kind of exist for the sake of existing because fans wanted a fifth one when you know, how do you guys feel like if there was never a fifth film, how do you feel about the way the fourth film ended? Because I think that that ending was far superior to anything this film offers.
I agree with you. I would have left it at the fourth film.
Yeah.
Uh,
Or taking the time to do a proper sequel instead of throwing something together. Whether it took them 15 years to get it out or not, or however long it was, is almost irrelevant because the quality, the way the story was done, everything just felt like it was thrown together last minute just to get a movie out.
and if they could have done a good one, you mentioned 3D earlier that they were looking into that. I would have loved to seen the Sentinels in 3D to where they come at your head while you're watching the movie. That would have been sick.
That could have been fun.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Also, I'm pretty sure, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe I missed it because like this is the first time that I actually remember them saying the name Falling the Ball Sentinels in this movie, whereas I don't feel like that was
They did in
spoken
one of
in
the
previous.
super early ones.
Really? Okay. Maybe
Okay,
I
I
just missed
missed
it.
it because I didn't hear it either until this one.
Yeah. Like during Reggie's recap, because like I remember I was like, I only know that they're called Sentinels because of Mark. Like that's it.
Yeah. Well, when I heard Sentinels, I was thinking Matrix. So, but yeah, it, that would have
Yeah,
been cool if they did a 3D one.
I think it was like number 2. They referred to them as Sentinels or something like that.
I will take your word for it. I
So
yeah,
would
I
you would you
go ahead, Mark.
ultimately go back and watch the series again?
Watch the series as a whole 100%. I'd leave out this movie. This movie is not even worth the toilet paper I wipe my butt with.
I watched
Right.
it twice just because I was trying to see what all I was missing.
So sorry.
That's called dedication right
That
there.
is
Well, I
very that
mean,
is
I thought I
dedication.
missed something. So I went back. I'm like, what am I missing with the storyline? And then I went back to Mark. He's like, no, it's all over the place. But
Yeah, the
I
whole
agree.
series
I
is
would
like
have
that.
stopped at 4. I would have stopped the movie before this
And
if I go back and rewatch it.
I think my biggest complaint with the whole thing is that all of the movies are kind of all over the place and incoherent to an extent.
I can understand that and definitely see that like the way that they've approached the other sequels, like there is a level of incoherentness. So you
Right.
essentially leave there what you leave essentially almost with like more questions than you do answers. And like we established last week, I think two and three are a little bit more in like the traditional vein, but I think that this film you walk away with the worst with the questions, whereas this is supposed to be a finale. Everything that you had questions about this entire series, this movie was supposed to answer, and instead it just kind of felt like I saw this meme the other day, and I'm just gonna like relate it. It's the meme of like Walter White and his wife giving him a hand job. And there is nothing, and I texted my friend that meme, and I was like, there's nothing worse than a sad hand job. And that's what this movie feels like.
I mean, but you're still getting a hand job.
Oh,
We clearly have two different opinions on hand jobs. It's fine.
Yeah.
yeah. I'm just staying over here. Y'all could talk about hand jobs.
Speaking of things that you use with your hands,
Um,
uh Reggie did this is the first film where they took that trope of Reggie always trying to get lucky and flipping it on its edge, where you actually had the character of Dawn actually try to like do it to him, but he was asleep. So
Yeah. But I
well, he
heard
was old at this point.
Mark got really excited when he went upstairs and he thought that Reggie was going to get lucky, and all of a sudden it was sentinels coming out of the boobs.
that was last one. That was Oblivion.
Was it last one? Sorry. Like I
Yeah,
said, I
you're
binge
fine.
watched them all.
You're
Still, he
fine.
still got happy at that point.
Is there anything else with this one that you
This
guys want
one,
to want to talk about or go
No, I think
through?
we're good.
I think we're good.
All right, so this is the finale of our Phantasm November series. So let's do this. How would you guys rank these in terms of 5 to 1? Which is the best one? Which is the worst one? Billy, you go first since you're our guest.
I mean, the worst one's going to be the one we just watched. I'll tell you that right now. That is
Yeah,
the worst one.
that's going to be the
Um,
general consensus.
that's general consensus. I mean, it's more towards the best one I thought was four to me. I liked four. And then, the other ones just fall into place, two, three, one. But one sets up the story. So, but one seemed slow to me. So that's why one is a little bit further down for me, because the other ones started to get more into it versus just the story. Mark,
Mark, what do you got?
I was waiting on him to be done. He's just over there like, la, la, la,
you told me to talk more. Shut the hell up.
Um, I like the first one the best. Obviously, five is the worst. Um, so it's now between two, three, and four. They all had their moments. Um, I don't know. The creature coming out of the back scene in number two was pretty epic. So I guess pretty much 1, 2, 4, 3, 5.
All right, so obviously Ravager is gonna be number 5. So terrible. This was terrible. Number 3 is gonna be my number 4, Lord of the Dead. Got some great moments. Overall, doesn't really compare to some of the other sequels. Number 2, Phantasm 2 is gonna be number 3 for me. The original Phantasm is gonna be uh the number 2, and then I'm with Billy. Phantasm Oblivion was
Your
It's just
favorite.
such a remarkable film, man.
I'll have to go back and rewatch it.
Yeah.
Definitely, because I mean, to me, like I said, that was the better of all of them.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, I guess that's it for us on this episode of Abyss Gazing. If you guys haven't checked out any of our other episodes on the Phantasm series, go check it out. Shout out to our friends Gone Cold, Love What I Love podcast, Melissa Knepp from the writer director behind Corn Together, Abby Shay Weinberger, the co-writer and director from the film Blank, and our friend Billy for making this series possible. Billy, where can people find you online?
Online, just message Mark, like I said. Mark, get with me so I can set something up.
Yeah, Mark,
Okay.
do it.
Wait, what are you trying to set up?
I don't know. Later.
Coming to hang out or?
Yeah, that too.
Oh, okay.
Mark, outside of here, where can people find you?
I mean, you can look at old projects that I've done on Instagram, but I haven't done any updating for a while. And like I said, I'm still trying to complete this one project so I could get on to doing display stuff. So yeah.
Well, you guys can find me. I am most active on Letterboxd. The handle is Captain Nostalgia. You guys can find my other podcast, That's High Praise, a Nicolas Cage podcast, wherever you guys get your podcasts from, as well as our podcast, Abyss Gazing. And check out our parent company, Victims and Villains. We are on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Patreon, and of course, wherever you guys get your podcasts from. So we'll be back in December with some fresh spooks and scares. I'm going to do that again. We will see you guys in December with some fresh scares. So until next time, remember, the longer you gaze into the abyss, the more the abyss gazes back into you. If you or someone you know is listening to this podcast right now and you're struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, or depression, we encourage you guys to please reach out. This is the heartbeat of why we do what we do. Suicide is currently the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, and as of this recording, there are 132 suicides that take place each and every day on American soil. And when you scale back internationally, there are 800,000 successful suicides. That is one death roughly every 40 seconds. So if you or someone you know is struggling, you guys can go to victimsandvillains.net/hope. That resource is going to be right in the description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this. There you'll find resources that include the National Suicide Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-8255. You can also text HELP to 741-741. We also have a plethora of other resources, including churches, getting connected with counselors, LGBT resources like the Trevor Project, and also veteran hotline as well. Please, if you hear nothing else in the show, understand that you listening to this right now, have value and worth. We get it. Suicide, depression, mental health, these are hard topics, and the stigma around them doesn't make it any easier. But please consider the resources right in the descriptions below, wherever you guys are listening, because once again, you have value and you have worth. So please stay with us.